Hello everybody, I'm KC, and welcome to another edition of Let's Talk About, and welcome to the latest installment of To Infinity War and Beyond. Marvel had a great first step into its cinematic universe. Let's see if they can keep it up with probably the most popular hero from Phase 1, the Incredible Hulk. Before I started this series, there were only 2 Marvel movies I had yet to watch. Thor Ragnarok, since I sadly missed seeing it in theaters, and this one. And really, that was just kind of through lack of interest. While I really love me a Jekyll and Hyde scenario, there was nothing about Bruce Banner's struggle with the Hulk that made me want to see a whole movie on it. No one seems to talk about it as much as the others, even Marvel hardly mentions it anymore. I think I remember one reference to when Bruce fought as the Hulk in New York before the Avengers, and that was about it. So I just assumed that I got everything I was going to get out of Bruce as a character and his relationship with the Hulk through the Avengers and his future appearances. But now having seen the movie, I kind of did get the gist already, but I'd say this is a really good Hulk movie. The movie begins with Bruce Banner, played by Edward Norton, already on the run from the army after his experiment had gone terribly wrong, trying to cure himself of his rage-induced personality that he gained from immense exposure to gamma radiation, and keep it away from people who want to use it as a weapon. This goes about as well as you might expect. In many ways, this movie incorporated a lot more of what Iron Man only toyed with here and there as far as expanding the shared Marvel universe. Stark's name, as well as S.H.I.E.L.D., is dropped quite a few times, including Tony's awesome cameo at the end, and the Gamma project that Bruce was developing was an expansion of a super soldier project from World War II. Gee, I wonder what they could possibly be referring to. But the plot itself is pretty standard. That's not a bad thing, it just makes the movie average. While personally, I would have liked to have seen the circumstances leading up to Bruce's experiment, things like him being excited or even obsessed with his work to make the downfall even more tragic, they do portray Bruce's mindset after the accident very well, and it's easily the highlight of the movie. I especially like the touch of him monitoring his pulse to keep his adrenaline under check. It even beeps rapidly when it starts to speed up, creating this sort of ticking clock suspense during the more intense scenes where he's under pressure to hold the monster within. It works really well. And while I'm no expert on the Hulk, it seems like this movie is very aware of what came before, not only trying to tell a different story from the one you've seen in adaptations before, but also calling back to them. I especially got a kick out of the use of the infamous theme from the Incredible Hulk TV show. Oh, and Lou Ferrigno cameos in it. Because of course he does. And speaking of the Hulk, let's talk about our lead. After loving Mark Ruffalo's portrayal of Bruce Banner, and already thinking Edward Norton was kind of a weird choice, I wasn't sure how well he was going to do in this. But I have to admit, it works. I still have trouble believing he was a scientist capable of developing this experiment in the first place. He just doesn't sell the technobabble as well as his MCU brethren. But as far as the tortured man fighting every second to keep control of his own body, that is where his performance shines. There's surprisingly little dialogue from Bruce himself on what happened, how it affects him, or how he feels. Outside of a conversation or two, it's all conveyed through his actions, and Norton really sells that side of Banner, especially the scenes where you do see the consequences of his Hulk side. I still don't think it was a perfect casting choice, but for what it is, it's really good. While the rest of the cast is fine. Nothing particularly memorable, but not awful either. Liv Tyler as Bruce's kind of, sort of, maybe girlfriend is fine. And on a side note, I appreciate that she trusts Bruce through the whole thing and isn't pressured into turning him in at any point. I was waiting for that infamous trope, and I'm glad it never happens. William Hurt as her father and the general who was after Bruce is fine, though I swear he looks exactly like Captain Stottlemyre from Monk. And then there's our villain. Well, technically the general is also an antagonist to Bruce, but I mean the thing the Hulk gets to punch in the climax. Remember what I said about Obadiah and Iron Man, where the shift from silent but menacing to boastful and power mad didn't really work? Here, it works. Not to say that Blonsky, played by Tim Roth, is particularly compelling, because he's not, but like some villains we'll get to later, sometimes you just need someone mad for power. Blonsky is just a guy who thought he was messing with forces beyond his understanding for the right reasons, and then became mad with power. It's a classic villain archetype, and I had a lot of fun with his character, especially since when he eventually turns into the Abomination, they managed not to make it look incredibly ridiculous. That's quite an accomplishment. I guess with that, I should talk about the effects, which impressive. The Hulk looks really good, and the other actors really act like this mutated behemoth is right in front of them. And the fact that they got this thing to emote as subtly as it does in their first outing is quite admirable. My favorite scene in the movie is when the Hulk just lets out all of his anguish in one roar over a mountainside, and then Betty calms him down and leads him inside. It's so simple, but it tells you everything about what the characters are feeling, with hardly any words. The magic of visual storytelling, everybody! And the action scenes are definitely more intense and exciting than in Iron Man. While I don't feel like I felt the weight as much as I did in that movie, especially with the Hulk himself, it was still awesome. And there were times where I did with the objects around the Hulk, which makes me wonder how much of the action scenes were done with practical effects, because it seems like quite a few. If anything, it was adrenaline pumping and freaking cool. Because let's be honest, most people go to a Hulk movie for one reason, and one reason only. Hulk! Smash! Yeah, he does. In the end, overall, The Incredible Hulk was exactly what I thought I'd get from a Hulk movie. While it does take time for the characters to breathe, it's not much. The movie is one huge on-the-run conflict, and there's always something to keep your attention. I'm not sure how much I lost by waiting this long to see it, but it was definitely worth at least one rental. The only real issue with the movie is that it feels incomplete. And I'm not talking about the Avengers hints, those are cool. I mean things like Bruce's amount of control over his alter ego being left up in the air, or the moment where the scientist, who I didn't bother to mention with the other characters, starts to mutate. I may not be the biggest Marvel fan, but even I know Leader, and he would have been an amazing villain for a sequel, especially post-Avengers. I've since read and heard all sorts of reasons for why a sequel never happened, but it's still a shame. By this point, the character who is probably the most well-known hero of Phase 1 has been put on the same level of Black Widow, only appearing in other people's movies instead of getting their own franchise, which I felt he earned after seeing this movie and just imagining how cool a sequel starring Ruffalo would have been. But oh well, I still enjoy this movie a lot more than I thought I would, and the Jade Giant would have many more adventures on the big screen, even if they weren't in his own sequels. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.